Hello and welcome to Between the Lines, the podcast that dives deep into the stories reshaping Asia Pacific's reinsurance landscape. We're recording here in the Hong Kong newsroom of InsuranceAsia News. I am Mithun Varkey, the editor-in-chief. It's been quite an eventful few weeks since our last episode. The world has been shaken by the start of yet another war in the Middle East, one that's already having major implications for the global economy, energy supply, and of course the insurance industry. We'll take a closer look at the fallout from the escalating conflict in Iran later in this episode. Our special guest this week, industry veteran Phil Bilney, Chief Executive and founder of Plus8 Partners. Phil founded Plus8 Partners in Hong Kong. It's a platform that brings together brokers, MGAs, loss adjusters, and TPAs under one platform. In this candid conversation, Phil, a longtime leader in the marine broking and underwriting space in Asia, shares his thoughts on how Hong Kong can reclaim its position as a hub for marine insurance and why that matters now more than ever. He's got some great insights and a few bold suggestions.
I think we've got to be honest with ourselves, haven't we? Hong Kong has slipped behind. It's traditionally been compared with Singapore. I think there are a great many differences between Singapore and Hong Kong, not just in terms of the insurance market, but culturally, in terms of focus, the direction, and so on. But the reality is that over the last 10 years or so, Singapore has streaked ahead in terms of the size of the insurance and reinsurance market and the number of participants there. But it doesn't have to stay that way.
Joining me in this episode are our regular contributors, senior correspondent Aidan Gregory and reporters Joana Nguyen and Roshan Nambiar. Welcome, everyone. Let's get into it. We are witnessing another major conflict in the Middle East. On February 28, joint US-Israel strikes targeted Iranian military sites, command centers, and missile facilities. Iran fired back with waves of drones and missiles aimed at US bases and allies across the region. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Azerbaijan, and even UK bases in Cyprus, and effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz, a critical passage for the world's energy exports, especially to Asia. Insurers wasted no time activating their 7-day cancellation clauses on war policies, and now new covers are now being priced at steep premiums. Shipping disruptions, meanwhile, are causing ripple effects around the world. Joana, can you bring us up to speed on what's happening on the shipping and marine front?
Yes, insurers are rapidly reassessing their approach amidst the Middle East conflicts, offering reinstatement of cover at materially increased rates and more underwriting scrutiny for voyages into or near the sensitive zones. Marsh, for example, expected that near-term rate increases for marine hull insurance in the Gulf could range from 25 to 50%. Meanwhile, marine war risk premiums in the international markets have surged more than tenfold since the beginning of the conflict. Interestingly, Hong Kong is saying that the price of its marine war risk coverage has only increased 5 to 10 times cheaper than the international markets, which means that Hong Kong could be a challenger to London's long-standing dominance in the marine insurance amid the Middle East war. The US, meanwhile, is also saying that in order to restore confidence in maritime trade, it will provide a reinsurance facility insuring losses up to $20 billion in the Gulf region. This insurance will apply only to vessels that meet the criteria set by the US International Development Finance Corporation. We are watching how the insurance market is reacting to this. We'll bring it to you in the upcoming reports. Other than that, there's no systematic withdrawal of capacity at this stage. Should the situation escalate materially, for example, like sustained state conflict or significant vessel losses, further rate correction is likely.
And as the disruption drags on, countries around the world are stepping in with proposals. This is certainly a developing story. Aidan, what's the latest we have on the events?
Keeping the oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz will be vital to ensure that this crisis doesn't develop into a global energy catastrophe. At any given time, the Strait of Hormuz normally accounts for around 20 to 25% of the global seaborne oil trade. It is a vital artery in the world's energy supply. Uncle Sam isn't just intervening in the reinsurance markets. As of Wednesday morning, the US has said that it's sunk over a dozen mine-laying ships in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, the acute dangers of the current moment in the Strait have been highlighted. The UK maritime trade operations ship was hit by an unknown projectile, forcing the crew to evacuate. This is ultimately why marine insurers have withdrawn the coverage and hiked premiums. And most of the traffic going through the Strait is pretty much ground to a halt, barring ships bearing the flags of certain nations which Iran permits to transit the Strait.
Thanks, Aidan. Indeed, I mean, it's quite an unparalleled crisis that we are witnessing right now, and there is no signs of slowing down. It's been 2 weeks, and it's likely to continue. And actually, I mean, one of the biggest casualties so far seem to have been, ironically, the Gulf states. Of course, their supplies of oil cargo have been disrupted. Apart from that, countries like UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, which are some of the world's biggest aviation hubs, are seeing airspace closures. We know the aviation insurance market faces potential exposures far beyond what would have been considered plausible in the past, as we have reported recently. While war cover typically protects aircraft against direct losses, revenue losses from grounding and operational disruptions often fall under business interruption policies, which usually carry war exclusions, leaving airlines to absorb much of that hit. Although the aviation market will no doubt issuing review notices to remove cover or reinstate cover on different terms for the affected countries. But also what's really interesting is that the recent AerCap judgment in the London High Court on the Russian stranded jets case adds another layer of complexity to war insurance for airlines and airline insurers. It was the AerCap versus AIG and others case where the judge noted that while the insurance may be removed, I think the legal term is the grip of a war peril. So the aircraft may already be deemed to be in the grip of a war peril, such that war insurers may still be liable for any subsequent losses or damage to the aircraft. So that'll be something that we'll have to be watching very closely. And, when talking about the Gulf and specifically for Dubai, Dubai has been pitching itself as a financial services hub for the region, especially for the insurance sector. And they've been trying to attract a lot of the insurers and brokers, quite successfully so far. The war raises questions about the prospects of Dubai as an insurance hub. Aidan, what do you think?
This crisis certainly represents a major threat to Dubai's prosperity. After years of rapid growth since the pandemic, Dubai's financial services industry, including its efforts to position itself as a risk management hub, which, as you say, Mithun, have been very successful in recent years. Dubai's reputation as a safe haven for capital and talent is sure to take a hit as a result of the ongoing conflict with Iran. And, it's also bound to create a host of issues for locally based insurers and their staff, particularly when it comes to attracting talent and retaining talent. It's worth mentioning that Dubai is a very dynamic place, and it's bounced back from previous crises, such as 2008 financial crisis and the pandemic. But it's very clear that the city's insurance industry is going to face significant disruptions in the short term, particularly when it comes to staffing, depending on how long the conflict drags on for.
Exactly, and it's quite a complex situation. I don't think we have seen anything of this scale in a long time. Indeed, the pandemic was bad time, but the enormity and the complexity of a war and what that means to energy supplies and the different layers to it adds to it all. Moving away from the doom and gloom of the war and shifting focus back to Asia, there have been several notable leadership changes over the past couple of weeks. Roshan, can you give us a wrap up of the biggest headlines from the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, thanks, Mithun. So, if you want to hear about someone who's had a very interesting first day on the job, that would be Berkshire Hathaway Specialty's Marcus Portbury, who's taken over as the regional president for Asia and the Middle East. He's taking over from Mark Boy, who's retiring after more than 11 years with the company. Portbury, who's based in Hong Kong, has been with BHSI since 2014, and he brings over 3 decades of insurance experience, including senior roles across Asia. Broyle, widely credited with building BHSI's strong regional presence, will step down with high praise from the leadership as he begins his retirement. Second of all is in an InsuranceAsia News exclusive, Liberty has hired AIG's Cynthia Se to lead its newly unified Hong Kong operation. Se is currently the CEO of AIG Hong Kong and Macau and will step into her role in May. She brings over 25 years of industry experience. This is part of Liberty consolidating its two Hong Kong entities, Liberty Specialty Markets and Liberty International Insurance, as part of its new APAC operating model. And it follows a similar unification to what they did in Singapore, where Jimmy Tong was recently appointed the CEO. So finally, another big people move is Gallagher Re's shuffling of their APAC leadership. So Roshan Pereira has taken over as its new managing director and head of APAC, and as well as Richard Jones stepping in as the region's chairman. Pereira, who previously led the firm's APAC strategic solutions team, brings more than 25 years of experience, while Jones adds nearly 4 decades in reinsurance broking. They'll replace the outgoing leaders of Mark O'Brien, who's leaving the industry, and Mark Morley, who will retire. Gallery said that the pair will work closely together to drive the firm's next phase of growth in the region.
Thanks, Roshan. Finally, before we wrap up, Joana, you led our feature for International Women's Day, mega feature, I should call it, spotlighting some of the most influential women leaders in Asian insurance. We've talked about diversity and inclusion at the C-suite level for years. What are these women leaders telling you about the progress in the industry?
Right, to mark this year's International Women's Day, I spoke to 6 female leaders in Asia, and they say that the insurance industry has made a lot of progress in equality and diversity. We are seeing more outstanding female leaders reaching the top, even though they're still lacking behind the banking industry, particularly at C-suite levels. One of the issues they pointed are the career decisions and opportunities often emerge through informal connections. So sometimes women invest less time in those spaces, which can unintentionally make their contributions less visible. So that's why leaders and HR teams need to recognize unconscious bias, create inclusive cultures, and provide access to mentors, sponsors, and opportunities that raise visibility. One of them say that it's not about favoritism; it's about ensuring everyone has equal access to the same tools and opportunities in order to succeed. That's just one opinion. The story features several other interesting insights. For example, like the reason why in Japan women only accounts for about 3% of fully qualified actuarial members, or like the common stereotypes of women's leadership styles, as well as advice for younger professionals. So I think overall it's an interesting read. It can offer a lot of insights and ideas how the industry can build a stronger pipeline of qualified women who can succeed sustainably. So our listeners, please check out the article in case you haven't.
Absolutely. I mean, Joana, was a fantastic story. I really enjoyed reading it, and it's quite a read for anyone interested in this. Moving on, let's just quickly discuss what everyone's got on their plates for the coming days, stories that everyone's working on. Again, I'll start with you, Joana. What are you working on this week?
So the one for renewals is coming in less than 3 weeks, and I'm reaching out to reinsurance brokers to understand their general expectation for this renewal, especially amid the current Middle East tensions. Would it be a hardening in certain lines of business or geographies, or like how the conflict is impacting the market? One of the brokers in the Philippines, for example, already told me that the situation has highlighted the importance of energy diversification and accelerating the transition towards renewable energy, which will in turn increase the demand for insurance and reinsurance capacity, particularly for construction, operational risk, as well as catastrophe protection. So please stay tuned as we bring you this timely coverage.
We'll have some comprehensive coverage from around Japan, Philippines, India, and potentially South Korea as well. So that'll be a coverage worth looking out for. Roshan?
So, from one of my conversations with someone in the industry recently, I got to find out that Southeast Asia has recently seen an increase in battery energy storage system deployments, or better known as BESS. I plan to speak to brokers and insurers to better understand the factors behind the growth in BSS deployments in Southeast Asia, and also to gain a clearer understanding of BSS technologies overall.
Thank you, Roshan. Thanks, guys. But as we close out this meeting, the day we record today marks the 15th anniversary of the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan in 2011. It was a massive event, one of the largest insured loss events in Asia, certainly. And I think the numbers stand at $35 billion of insured losses and economic losses of around $210 billion. It was certainly one of the landmark events for the industry and for people around the region. Massive losses of life and property, and certainly for our industry, it was a sort of a stress test, and that has forced the reinsurance industry to look beyond vulnerability curves and ask hard questions about their own models and harder, tough questions about themselves. And as we discussed earlier in this podcast, we are witnessing a massive event with the Middle East conflict, and I think again underscores the relevance of the reinsurance industry. So thank you, everyone. It's a great meeting. Let's get back to work.
Thanks a lot, Mithun. Thanks, everyone.
Our guest this week is industry veteran Phil Bilney, the chief executive and founder of +8 Partners. +8 Partners is a unique insurance platform that brings together brokers, MGAs, loss adjusters, and TPAs under one roof. In our conversation, Phil, who spent decades building marine broking and underwriting businesses across Asia, talks about how Hong Kong can re-establish itself as a powerhouse for marine insurance and why the timing couldn't be more critical. He also shares some sharp insights and bold ideas on what it takes to get there. That's coming up next. Hello, Phil. Welcome to Between the Lines. It's great to have you with us. To kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your venture, +8 Partners, and how you came to Asia and how you got into insurance?
Yeah, thanks, Mithun, and I'm great to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. So, +8 Partners is headquartered in Hong Kong. We call it an ecosystem of companies because it's a group of brokers, MGAs, claims TPAs, service companies, all SMEs in the insurance sector, and all of them led by recognised experts in their field. And the whole concept is that those experts can get on with what they do because we share resources. We have a very collaborative environment, and they're living amongst like-minded people. So that collaboration, which is never mandatory, is quite natural, and it allows people to get on and make the most of what is a pretty comprehensive and very international group of people. We have about a dozen companies in the ecosystem now. Some of those companies have offices in several different countries. We have offices around Asia Pacific, in the UK, Europe, and North America.
About yourself, I mean, you've been in the market for a while. So can you tell us how it all?
Yeah, I actually, you know what? I just got back from a run, and I was thinking about that on the way around, and you've upset me now because I've realised that I've been living and working in Asia for over 35 years now, which is just horrific, and that's been an interesting journey. Obviously, the whole market has changed enormously during that time. But I think I'm very lucky. I'm very privileged because not only have I been able to participate in that and see those changes and be a part of it, but also I've been able to travel a great deal and learn firsthand a great deal about other markets. So I'm very lucky in that respect. My last manifestation, if you like, before we started +8 was building the FP Marine organization, which was back in the day was certainly the leading marine broker in Asia.
You've been in Hong Kong for a long time, and you've been in the marine market a while. So having been part of the Hong Kong marine market for so many years, so from your sort of vantage point, how do you see Hong Kong's current status as a marine insurance hub, and how do you evaluate the future prospects?
I think we've got to be honest with ourselves, haven't we? Hong Kong has slipped behind. It's traditionally been compared with Singapore. I think there are a great many differences between Singapore and Hong Kong, not just in terms of the insurance market, but culturally, in terms of focus, the direction, and so on. But the reality is that over the last 10 years or so, Singapore has streaked ahead in terms of the size of the insurance and reinsurance market and the number of participants there. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Hong Kong has many advantages. And certainly, if you're interested in developing business in China, then there is absolutely no peer to Hong Kong. And we have tremendous infrastructure. We have an extremely efficient government and civil service. We have a financial services sector around us, which is still very large and very, very influential in the region. So it doesn't always have to be like that. And I think we need to start looking at ways to change it, and to catch up again. I was particularly pleased to see the IA initiative recently. I thought that was important, and I think as well, actually, I will just say that regulators generally make a great punch bag. Market practitioners are everywhere will always want to criticize a regulation and complain about compliance and this sort of old stuff. But I honestly think the IA has done a tremendous job in Hong Kong. So I've absolutely nothing but praise for the work they've done so far. And obviously, this is an important initiative, and having government support is critical in that, and they clearly have that.
You mentioned, Hong Kong has slipped sort of into maritime insurance rankings. What are some of the challenges holding Hong Kong back? And you spoke about the initiatives from the regulator, but what has been ailing Hong Kong in these past few years, and what could change, and what can Hong Kong as a market change? Not so much regulatory initiatives, but what are some initiatives that the market could take to sort of improve its rankings in the global standing, as it were?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think in some ways you have to go a long way back and think about. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Lloyd's first set up in Singapore, and I remember the debate within Lloyd's at that time as to whether it should be in Hong Kong or Singapore, and for all sorts of reasons, which we don't need to go into now. Singapore was just better at playing that game. It was better at attracting investment. It was better at making potential investing companies and the wives of the CEOs of those companies feel good about the place and actually want to be there and to live there and to make a living out of it. And Hong Kong has always been much more about creating a level playing field, providing all the services that you need. So come and get on with it. And I think I don't think I'd be straying too far from the reality if I said that I think that Singapore has built on that and has done very well to continue to attract people and to continue to improve its offering, where Hong Kong has perhaps not done enough. So it's not so much that Hong Kong has become unattractive in itself. It's just it hasn't kept pace with the kind of environment which Singapore has created.
There's, you say Hong Kong is a great place if you want to trade in China, and as a big way for China, which is a massive market in itself. But I mean, is there ways that Hong Kong can move beyond just being, servicing the sort of local trade and actually leading underwriting from a global perspective to, underwriting global cargo flows? And do you see that in bringing that capacity to write that global business from the region?
Yeah. I mean, it's not. First of all, it's not for me to make public policy. Obviously, or all I can ever do is make suggestions from the perspective of someone that's been in the market and knows the market very well for a very long time. And it's interesting because, as we've seen with this recent initiative, the almost knee-jerk first step is always to look at two things. It's to talk to the local maritime sector, shipping companies, port operators, and so on, and it's to provide tax incentives. Now, both of those things are very important and very valuable. The thing is that if you want to build a substantial marine market, you have to look at the fact that it is 80% cargo internationally. So you need to build a cargo market, and a market means you've got to have a swathe of underwriters that are prepared to compete with each other, to support each other where necessary, to provide options to brokers, which brokers always need, and to basically create that dynamic which leads to you being able to say we're a leading market. Now, that's not to say that the shipping sector and the hull and P&I part of the equation, charterers, liability, port terminals, and that sort of thing, that's not to say they're not important. They're critically important. But we can't be said to be a major marine insurance centre unless we've addressed the cargo area. And that's, whilst there is cargo, there'll be people listening to this now saying, well, hang on a minute, I'm in Hong Kong, I write cargo, and that's right. But it's not enough. We need more. And we have fewer cargo underwriters in Hong Kong today than we had 5 years ago. And some of those have gone to Singapore. Some of those have pulled out altogether when the market went hardened dramatically a few years ago, and they haven't come back. So we've got to find ways of bringing those guys back. Now, the second point around tax incentives is also a very important one. And I think the key point I'd like to make about that is I like the intention, but we really must learn the lessons of the last time we tried to do this, which was not very long ago, several years ago, when a 50% rebate, I think this was pre-COVID times, but somebody can correct me on that. But we were offered as marine practitioners in Hong Kong, we were offered a 50% tax rebate, corporate tax rebate. Great, everyone loves that. The trouble is the IRD didn't get the memo. And what happened was that a great many entities found themselves arguing with the IRD that they were owed a rebate, and the IRD said, no, you're not, because you are doing reinsurance, not insurance, or your assures aren't based in Hong Kong, or whatever it was. And the fact is that it left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And some of that debate continues to rumble on now. So if we're going to do this, then I implore the IA to sit down with the IRD, to sit down with market practitioners, and make sure that we all understand the definition of marine for a start. I mean, marine can mean all sorts of different things. So the point is that we have to be clear. What do these, what activities do these tax incentives relate to? Let's all understand that and sign off on it. So those are the sort of obvious ones.
Tax incentives work, but you can't just that has to be well structured. You mean?
Well, it has to be understood.
Right.
It has to be quite clear, and I think that's where we went wrong before. And they do work. They are important. There's no question about that. I think we can overstate their importance, but they're certainly a factor in the decision-making process.
You've suggested a performance-based model, essentially buying market share by tying rebates to premium volume. Isn't that just a race to the bottom or on price, or is there a way to structure that, generally builds sustainable, profitable growth for the market?
Yeah, look, I mean this is a very raw idea, and I don't pretend that it's been carefully brainstormed by a team of extremely clever data analysts. But what it's born of is the familiar commercial mechanism that we see in the market every day of M&A, where one underwriter will go and buy another underwriter's book, and there'll be an earn-out period, or the cost will be over a number of years, will be related to the performance of that book in one way or another. So why not use that to some extent as a model for incentives? So what you do is you say to an incoming insurer, right, your tax incentives will be graduated according to the scale of your book. Now the regulator within reasonable parameters is not interested in the performance of that book. All that we as Hong Kong are interested in is getting as much business into the territory as we possibly can. Some sort of way of saying, we don't just want you to set up, we actually want you to be writing your business in the territory. And for a period of time, maybe the first 3 years, we will recognize that by rebating more of your tax as a further incentive to bring more business in. Because then what you could well find is you'll find insurer ABC, who's already operating in Singapore, setting up in Hong Kong and moving the portfolio up here because it's going to be net much more profitable for them. It's something I think is worth some sort of consideration. In terms of whether it's a race to the bottom or not, as I say, that's not our concern. That's a matter for the insurers to worry about.
Talking about capacity, we've been talking about MGAs, and there's been a bit of a MGA boom around the region, and you plus 8 has its own MGAs as well, and I think Hong Kong MGAs is one place where Hong Kong seems to have been slightly ahead of Singapore in terms of regulation, in terms of the framework. How do you see the sort of MGA environment in Hong Kong helping Hong Kong become more of a hub?
I think Hong Kong has got an amazing opportunity here. There's no question that MGAs that they've reached a point of some maturity now. I mean, some MGAs are enormous entities in their own right, writing billions of dollars of business, and they've become a fundamental part of the fabric of the insurance market. And really, you're quite right. Hong Kong is just about it's the best option if you want to set up an MGA in the region, and arguably it's the only option. And I know that the IA are working on developing the regulatory framework for MGAs. It needs some work because at the moment, an MGA is still regulated in much the same way as a general insurance agent and a private individual on the street corner with a mobile phone. And obviously that doesn't make any sense. So you have, for example, this 4 principle rule. This goes back way beyond in my time. I don't know when this existed, but for very good reason. That insurance agent would only be allowed to work for 4 companies, for 4 principals. And that rule still applies to MGAs. Now, it doesn't make any sense for an MGA. An MGA is, generally speaking, a well-resourced corporate entity which has got ambitions very often to write business across a multitude of lines for a multitude of principals in a multitude of territories even. And being restricted to 4 principals is an anachronism which we need to get rid of very quickly. Remove that, update the regulations generally, and the regulation of MGAs in places like the UK and Australia is advanced. I think you could follow the FCA model very, very successfully and quite easily.
Well, I mean, something that you mentioned earlier as well, the question of talent. I mean, that's, you mentioned some of the brokers and underwriters who are in the market are not here anymore. How do you attract talent? I mean, especially in an industry like marine. I mean, both marine and insurance. I think it's that's not what the youngsters speak of coming out of the university working for marine.
What?
Or for
That's outrageous.
So how do you solve for that? How do you get people excited about the world of marine and the world of insurance? And how do you bring them to Hong Kong?
Actually, you've touched on a really, really important point there, which I've often thought about, which is that, generally speaking, as an industry, insurance is absolutely crap at selling itself. In reality, it's a great career. It's a great place to be. I wouldn't swap it for anything, actually, and I'd encourage any young person to give it another look. So yeah, there's a whole question there as to how we make insurance sound more interesting than accountancy, and I don't think we're very good at that. With apologies to the accountants out there on Planet Finance, that I suppose is a broader question for the insurance industry as a whole. I think attracting people to Hong Kong is a piece of cake, to be perfectly honest. If you're 25 years old and sitting in the rain in London at the moment, I mean, Hong Kong is just a wonderful place. If you're a young guy, come out here and have a great time. And I tell you what, I think we should do. I think this will be an absolute. This will be a banger. So if you go to Leadenhall Market, the area next to Lloyd's in London, you go there on a Thursday night, the place is rammed. The pubs are spilling out. You've got brokers and underwriters there, all the rest of it. Stick up a big video screen in Leadenhall Market on a Thursday night and show footage of the South Stand of the Sevens. And then just say, you think you're having fun? Try Hong Kong.
They'll be on the next flight, yeah.
Exactly.
I think
But look, on a more pragmatic basis, I'm quite sure that there are conversations to be had with the immigration department and so on, but to make it easier for people and for talent to come here, and not just from London, obviously. Just happens to be where I came from, but from the mainland, from everywhere in the world, and to if you're going to make it more attractive for people to set up here, then we have to help build a talent pool. I'm also pleased to see the training incentives that are being put in place, and actually I think are very generous, because of course we have a homegrown talent as well.
Do you think some of these geopolitical tensions that we're seeing in the Middle East, and we don't know how long that's going to last, but that's going to have an impact on the marine market in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really difficult to say. I mean, your mind immediately, of course, goes to war risks and the exposures which are suddenly appearing. But the reality is that the market generally, and this is driven out of London, is well prepared for this sort of stuff. So you see, Vivace, for example, writes a lot of war risk, and it's a constantly moving and changing and dynamic environment. The rates are going to be here, there, and in different parts of the world. So really, not much needs to happen for the market, and the market is already responding. All that they'll do is put the rates up because the facilities and the capacity is there already. There'll probably be an even more capacity because of the way the oil price is rising. But the sort of touchstone for that is always the Iran-Iraq war, when tankers were running out of the Gulf and sometimes being charged rates as high as 10% of the value. And if there's one thing that's true about insurance, is that this is the time for it to be effective and boring and do its job. And you know what? It's a much better industry than it was back in the 90s. I often reflect. I mean, I can remember Piper Alpha and what that did to Lloyd's, and how Lloyd's pretty much almost was bankrupted by it. And the changes which were put into effect, not just in Lloyd's, but in the market generally, around, aggregations and accumulations and Solvency II. And insurers are now much, much more solvent, much more rigorous in their way that they organise their capital and the way that they understand their risk. So you don't see insurers collapsing these days. It was pretty commonplace in the 80s and 90s. So it's a more boring industry, but it's a better industry for it.
Phil, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you with us, and it's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Mithun. It's been great fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's do it again sometime.
That's all from us in this episode of Between the Lines. We're following developing stories, especially with the conflict in the Middle East. Follow us on our website, on our LinkedIn, to keep up on the latest developments. Make sure you're subscribed to our daily and weekly newsletters delivered straight to your inbox. And of course, we'd love to hear your feedback on the podcast. Email us at editorial@InsuranceAsiaNews.com. I'm Mithun Varkey. Thanks for listening.